My daughter-in-law called me at 4:15 on a Thursday to tell me the surprise anniversary dinner for my son had been called off because the country club double-booked the private room. I told her not to worry. These things happen, and I sent her $800 to cover the deposit she said she'd lose. Then, on Friday morning, my neighbor mentioned she'd seen the whole family at that very club Thursday night. Candles and a cake and all, my son blowing out the candles with his arm around a woman who wasn't me anywhere in the picture. That was the morning I decided to find out what else they'd been hiding behind that polite little smile. My name is Wilhelmina Tully, though everybody who's known me longer than a week just calls me Mina, and I have lived in Beaufort, South Carolina, for 67 of my 68 years. I was born in 1957, over on St. Helena Island, in a small frame house my father rented, and I came up in this low country where the marsh grass turns gold in October, and the shrimp boats come in at dusk, and folks still bring you a plate when somebody dies. My husband Russell and I built our own house ourselves in 1991, or I should say Russell did most of the building, and I did most of the painting and the worrying, out on a quiet road off Ladies Island, a little white house with a tin roof and a screened porch where you can hear the rain like a drum. Russell passed 4 years ago this past spring. Heart attack in the garage, just dropped, 63 years old, and there wasn't a thing the paramedics could do. We'd been married 41 years. I worked as a bookkeeper for a seafood wholesaler down by the waterfront for 31 of those years, 10-hour days during the busy season, balancing other people's money to the penny, which is a thing you'll want to remember later in this story. I tell you all this so you understand the kind of woman I am. I am careful. I write things down. I keep my receipts in a green accordion folder. Russell got me one Christmas, and I have never in my life bounced a check. If you're listening to me from somewhere far from this little corner of South Carolina, do me a kindness and drop the name of your town in the comments, because it does my old heart good to know how far a voice can travel. And please, stay with me to the end. There's a part near the finish I need you to hear. My only child is my son, Desmond. Desmond Earl Tully, born the 4th of June 1986, at the hospital over in Beaufort, 8 pounds even, with a head full of black hair and a cry like a foghorn. Russell cried when he held him. I'd never seen that man cry before, and I only saw it twice after. Desmond was a sweet boy. Helped me snap beans on the porch, rode his bike down to the dock to watch the boats, made straight A's because his daddy and I told him an education was the one thing nobody could ever take from you. He went off to Clemson, first one in either of our families to finish college, and he became an accountant, which made me proud beyond what I could say, my boy doing the same kind of numbers work I'd done, only with a degree and a real office and a salary I used to brag about at church. He married Brielle 9 years ago, Brielle Voss. Her people are from up around Greenville, what they call new money. Down here, the daddy made it in commercial real estate, and they have got a way about them, the whole family, like they're always a half step ahead of you, and a little amused by something you can't see. I'm not saying that to be ugly. I tried with that girl, I truly did. At the wedding, her mother Felicia wore a dress that I later learned cost more than my first car, and she spent the reception talking to a state senator, and when I came up to introduce myself, she shook my hand the way you'd hold something a child handed you off the ground. Desmond and Brielle live over in Mount Pleasant now, near Charleston, about an hour and a half up the road. 2 little girls, my granddaughters, Sutton and Margot, 6 and 4, and I would walk through fire for those babies, though I don't get to see them near as much as I'd like. It was a Thursday afternoon, the 19th of September last year, and I was out back picking the last of the figs off the tree Russell planted when my phone rang and the screen said Brielle. She didn't call me much. Maybe once a month, and usually it was Desmond's idea. I always could tell. "Hey, Mina," she said. That bright voice she puts on. "How are you?" "I'm just fine, sugar. Out here fighting the birds for my figs." "How are my babies?" "They're great. They're so great. They're so great." A little pause. I'd been a bookkeeper long enough to know a pause that's adding something up. So listen, I'm actually calling about Saturday, about Des's birthday dinner. Now I want you to understand, Desmond's birthday is in June, but back in August Brielle had called and said the family wanted to do a belated celebration in September, when everybody's schedules calmed down. A real nice dinner at the country club they belong to over in Mount Pleasant, and that I was invited, and could I help with the deposit, since money was a little tight with the girls' private school tuition coming due. I'd said of course. I'd already moved things around so my friend Hazel could drive me up that Saturday, because I don't like the interstate at my age. "What about it, honey?" I said, sitting down on the back steps. A pelican went over, low and slow, headed for the river. "Okay, so the worst thing happened." Her voice did that little downhill slide. "The club called this morning. They double-booked the Magnolia Room. There's some big wedding party that had it reserved before us, and it slipped through the cracks. They can't fit us Saturday. We're just devastated." "Oh no." "Well, that's all right. We'll just pick another day." Right, exactly, that's what I said. But here's the thing, the deposit. We already put down $800 to hold the room, and because of how the contract reads, with it being less than 2 weeks out, we lose it. It's non-refundable. And with tuition and everything, I hate to even bring it up. How much was it again? 800. I know it's a lot. We'll get it back to you, I promise, soon as Des's bonus comes in October. I looked out at the marsh. The tide was going out, and you could smell that low country smell, salt and pluff mud, the smell of my whole life. $800. I thought about the folder in my desk drawer where I keep track of things. Because I do keep track. Over the 4 years since Russell died, I had given Desmond and Brielle money 14 times, a new transmission, a vet bill for a dog, Sutton's dental work, the girls' summer camp, each time a different small emergency, and each time I'd written the date and the amount and the reason in my own hand, the way I'd done at the seafood company for 31 years. The total, if you want to know, had come to $19,400, not $1 of it ever paid back, though there was always a promise pinned to the end of every ask, like a little bow on a package. "I'll send it tonight," I said. "Oh, Mina, you're the best. I mean it. I'll text you my cell." And we talked another minute about the girls, and she put Margot on the phone, and that baby said, "Hi, Gigi," and my whole chest went soft. And then we hung up, and I sat on those steps a while, with the figs going warm in the bowl beside me. I sent the 800 that evening at 7:20. I remember because the local news was on. The next morning I drove the 4 minutes over to the Piggly, that's the Piggly Wiggly, for those of you not from down here, to get a few things, and in the cereal aisle I ran into Loretta Sumter, who has cut my hair since 1998 and who knows everything that happens in 3 counties before the people it happens to do. Loretta's got a sister who waits tables up at that very country club in Mount Pleasant. "Mina," she hollered, the way she does. "Lord, I was just thinking about your family. My sister Pam worked your son's party last night. Said it was the prettiest thing, all those white flowers, and a band even. I had a box of grits in my hand and I just held on to it." "Last night," I said. You mean Saturday? No, hon, last night, Thursday. Pam closed, said your boy looks so handsome, and his wife's people came down from Greenville, and there was a cake, big as a tire. She laughed. Pam said the bar tab alone like to gave her a heart attack. I stood there in that cereal aisle, and I felt the floor sort of lean. Thursday, the same Thursday Brielle had called me at 4:15 to tell me the dinner was cancelled. The same Thursday I'd sent $800 for a deposit on a party that, according to Loretta's sister Pam, had already happened that very evening, with a band and white flowers and a cake the size of a tire. Are you sure it was Thursday? I asked her, and my voice came out steady, which surprised me. Sure as I'm standing here. Pam's off Saturdays, always has been. It was last night. She squinted at me. You all right, Mina? You're white as a sheet. Just didn't sleep good, I said, these figs keeping me up. I bought my grits and my milk and a thing of laundry detergent I didn't even need, and I drove home with both hands tight on the wheel. And I did not cry, not yet. When I got in I set the bags on the counter, and I called the country club because 31 years of bookkeeping teaches you that you don't act on a rumor, you confirm the figures first. A young woman answered. I told her I was helping plan a celebration for the Tully family and just wanted to confirm the details. There was some typing and she said, "Oh yes, the Tully Voss party, Thursday the 19th, the Magnolia Room, 42 guests. It had gone beautifully. Was there anything else?" 42 guests. I thanked her and hung up. 42 people. And not a one of them was me. I sat down at my kitchen table, the one Russell and I bought at an estate sale in 1989, and I tried to make the numbers add up, the way I always do. Brielle had called me at 4:15 to tell me a Saturday dinner was cancelled. But the dinner had been Thursday, the same day, that very evening, and it had not been cancelled at all. It had 42 guests and a band, which meant the Saturday dinner had never existed. There had never been a Saturday I was invited to. The whole thing, the belated birthday, the invitation, the deposit, had been built like a little stage set, and the only purpose I could see for it was to get $800 out of me and to keep me down here on Ladies' Island while the people who mattered to them ate cake in the Magnolia Room. I needed Hazel. Hazel Quarterman has been my best friend since we were girls at the same little church, 60 years now, and she is the most level-headed person I know. I called her and all I said was, "Can you come?" And she said, "Putting my shoes on now." Hazel got there in 11 minutes and put the kettle on without asking, because she knows me. While the water heated, I told her everything, the call, the 800, Loretta in the cereal aisle, the woman at the club. Hazel listened the way she does, not jumping in, just nodding, until I was done. "Mina," she said finally, "how many times has that boy and his wife asked you for money since Russell passed?" 14. "And how much, all told?" 19,400. With last night's 800, 20,200. Hazel set her cup down very gently. "And they've paid back?" "Nothing." We sat quiet. A wren was fussing at something out in the wax myrtle. Russell always said wrens had more to say than preachers. "I need to know," I told her, "if there's more I'm not seeing, because a thing like this, a lie that careful, it isn't the first one. It's just the one I caught." Hazel pulled out her phone. "Then let's look." She found Brielle's page, the one Brielle keeps half public because she likes people to see, and we scrolled backward through the years. And child, it was like reading a second set of books, the real ones, kept beside the fake ones I'd been shown. There was the beach trip to Kiowa from the same month I'd paid the dog's vet bill. There was the new kitchen, all white marble, posted 3 weeks after I'd covered Sutton's dental work. There was a girls' weekend in Charleston with Felicia, spa robes and champagne. Dated within days of an emergency I'd sent $1,200 for. Every time I'd been told they were scraping by, there was a photograph that said otherwise. I felt something turn over in me, slow and cold. It wasn't only the money, it was the figs I'd put up to send them. It was the way I'd been bragging at church about my son the accountant. It was 42 people in a room, and not one chair pulled out for me. "There's something else we ought to check," Hazel said, and her voice was careful. "Mina, 4 years ago, after Russell, did Desmond have you sign anything?" I thought back. Those weeks after Russell died are mostly a fob to me, I'll be honest. People moving through the house with casseroles, papers everywhere. "He did," I said slowly. "He sat with me at this table and said he wanted to help me get my affairs in order. That with Daddy gone, somebody responsible ought to be able to handle things if I ever got sick. Power of attorney, he called it, and something to make the house easier to pass on someday, so it wouldn't get hung up in probate." I signed where he showed me. He's an accountant, Hazel. I trusted him to know. Hazel looked at me a long moment. "Do you have copies?" "In Russell's desk, I think." We went into the little room off the hall that Russell used as an office and that I've left just as it was, his reading glasses still on the blotter. In the bottom drawer I found a folder Desmond had left, neat, labelled in his handwriting, "Mom, Estate." Inside were the power of attorney and a deed. Hazel read slower than I could stand. "Mina," she said, "this deed, you signed your house over into a trust, and Desmond is the trustee, and the trust names him and the girls as the beneficiaries." She looked up. "You don't own this house anymore. Not the way you think. He controls it." I had to sit down in Russell's chair. The house he built with his own hands, the tin roof I can hear the rain on. I'd signed it away at this very desk, thinking I was protecting my baby's inheritance, and instead I'd handed my son the keys to the only thing I had left of their grandfather. "There's the power of attorney too," Hazel said. "Financial. Broad as a barn door. He can move money, open accounts, all of it in your name." "When's the last time you looked at your credit, Mina?" she asked. "My credit? I don't borrow. I've never needed credit." "That's not what I asked." She pulled her phone back out. "Let's look." It took some doing, the questions and the codes, but we got into one of those free credit sites, and Hazel went still the way she had before and turned the phone to me. There were accounts on there I had never opened, a credit card with a balance of $6,000, a personal loan for $11,000 from a bank I'd never set foot in, and worst of all, a home equity line of credit, $38,000, secured against my house, except it wasn't my house anymore. It was the trust's, and Desmond was the trustee, and Desmond had signed. "I'm going to tell you what I felt, because I promised you the truth." I did not feel like crying anymore. I felt the way I used to feel at the seafood company when I'd find a discrepancy somebody thought I'd never catch. A quiet, cold focus, like the whole world narrowing down to one column of figures that did not balance, and would, by God, balance before I was through. That evening, Hazel and I spread everything across my kitchen table and went through it the way I'd gone through 31 years of ledgers. Money I'd given them directly, $20,200. Debt taken in my name without my knowing, $55,000. My house, signed into a trust I didn't understand, controlled by the boy who'd been lying to me for years. And somewhere in Mount Pleasant, 42 people had eaten cake. Hazel stayed till near midnight. Before she left, she took both my hands. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to know all of it first," I said, "every number, and then I want my son to look me in the eye." Monday morning I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I called a woman named Adaya Zokonkwo. who'd handled my friend Pearl's mess of an estate and was known around here as somebody who did not lose. Her office was up on a second floor over a shop on Bay Street, and she listened to my whole story for the better part of an hour without once looking at her phone, which I appreciated. I laid it all out, the call, the deposit, the party, the deed, the power of attorney, the debts in my name. When I finished, she folded her hands. "Mrs. Tully, I have to ask you some hard questions, and I need honest answers." "I've been honest my whole life. Don't intend to stop now." "Do you want your son arrested?" "I'd thought about that on the drive up." "No, I don't want him in a cell, but I want what's mine put back, and I want him to understand exactly what he did. There's a difference between mercy and being a fool, and I am done being a fool." She nodded slowly, like I'd passed something. "Do you know what you're worth, Mrs. Tully?" It was a strange question. I get Russell's pension and my own little cheque. Maybe I've got 40,000-50,000 put by. The house, I guess, except apparently I don't have the house. She turned her computer toward me after a few minutes of typing and pulling records. "Let me show you something. Your husband worked for a company that was bought out in 2009. He had a retirement account that rolled over, with his life insurance, which it appears was never touched, and your own savings, and the appraised value of the property even inside the trust, Mrs. Tully. Your son has been treating you like a woman with nothing. You are not a woman with nothing. By my count, you're sitting on better than $400,000. I want to tell you I felt vindicated, but mostly I felt sad, because it meant my Desmond, my numbers boy, had looked at his own mother and decided she was a soft thing to be drained, and he'd been wrong about that in more ways than one. Adaze did her work fast. By that Friday she had pulled the loan applications and put my real signature next to the ones on those documents, and they were not the same hand, not even close. He'd forged me, badly, the way you do when you're sure nobody's ever going to look. She had the trust documents reviewed and found that the way it had been drawn, with me as the grantor and never properly advised, gave us solid ground to undo the whole thing. She found that Desmond had been claiming me as a dependent on his taxes for 3 years running, deducting thousands for in-home care and medical expenses, for a mother who picks her own figs and drives her own car, which she told me plain was federal tax fraud. "Here is where you decide," Adaise said when she'd laid it all out. "You can put this in front of the U.S. attorney, and your son will likely lose his CPA license, possibly his freedom. Or you can give him one chance, in a controlled room, with me present, to make every bit of it right. Pay it back, unwind the trust, amend the taxes, knowing that if he refuses or fails, the criminal file is already built and sitting in my drawer." She looked at me steady. "What kind of room do you want it to be?" "My kitchen," I said. "The table his daddy and I bought. Let him sit where he sat when he lied to me about my own house. So I called my son. I'll tell you, my hand was not steady when I dialed. He answered on the second ring, easy, warm, 'Hey, Mama,' the way he always did, and it just about broke me to hear it. 'Hey, baby,' I said. 'I was thinking, why don't you come down Sunday? Just you, leave Brielle and the girls. I want to make you a proper birthday supper since you all had your trouble with the club. I'll do your daddy's favourite, shrimp and grits and that lemon cake.'" A pause. I knew that pause now from both sides. "Sunday, that's kind of short notice, Mama. Desmond Earl." I let his daddy come into my voice. "I lost your father. I don't see those babies near enough. I am asking my only child to sit at my table and eat supper with me, one Sunday." "Okay," he said, gentle now. Okay, Mama, I'll come. What time? 2 o'clock. And come hungry? He came at 1:15 that Sunday in a car that cost more than my house used to be worth, in good slacks and a nice shirt, and he hugged me at the door and said the place smelled like his whole childhood, and I almost lost my nerve right there. I fed him first. I decided that. I made the shrimp and grits the way Russell liked them, with the andouille and a little cream and the lemon cake from my mother's recipe, and I watched my boy eat and close his eyes and say, "God, Mama, nobody cooks like you," and I let him have that, because it was the last easy moment we were going to have. When he set his fork down, I said, "I ran into Loretta Sumter at the Pig on Friday." Something flickered in his face. He's a smart boy. He always was. Her sister Pam waited your party. Thursday night, 42 guests, a band, a cake big as a tire. I kept my voice level, the way you read out figures. The same Thursday your wife called me at 4:15 to tell me the Saturday dinner was cancelled and to send $800 for a deposit on a room that by then you'd already used. He went still. "Mama, I can explain. I called the club myself, Desmond. I confirmed it. There was no Saturday. There was never a Saturday." I stood up and went to Russell's desk and came back with the green folder and a thicker one besides, and I set them on the table where he'd set the papers 4 years ago. "Sit still and listen to your mama, the way you used to." I opened it. "This is every dollar I have given you since your daddy died. 14 times, $20,200, with reasons, in my own hand. And this," I laid down the credit report, "is a credit card I never opened, a loan I never took, a line of credit for $38,000 against this house, signed by you as trustee of a trust I did not understand. I was creating when you sat me down at this table and told me you were protecting me." His face had gone the color of the grits. "I was going to put it all back. I swear to God, Mama, I was going to, and this," I went on, "because I would not be stopped now, is from the IRS. 3 years you claimed me as a dependent, in-home care, medical expenses, for a wheelchair I don't have, and nursing I don't need." I sat back down across from my only child. "Do you know what you saved yourself, telling the government your mother is feeble? $15,000. You sold the lie that I'm a burden, Desmond, to the United States government, and you got paid for it." He put his face in his hands, and his shoulders shook, and Lord help me, every cell in my body wanted to go around that table and hold him like he was 6 and had fallen off his bike. But I sat still. I'd done my crying alone, and this was not the time to undo it. That was when the office door opened, and Adize stepped out where she'd been waiting, and Hazel behind her, and Desmond's head came up. "Mama, what is this?" "Desmond, this is my attorney, Miss Okonkwo, and you know Hazel. They're here as witnesses. Miss Okonkwo, tell my son where things stand." Adize laid it out clean and cold, the way I'd asked her to. The forgery, the trust, the tax fraud, the exposure, she called it, up to 20 years in federal prison, the loss of his license, the end of his career, all of it documented, all of it ready to file Monday morning. "However," she said, "Mrs. Tully is offering you a choice." And she set the agreement in front of him. "Pay back every dollar, the $20,200 and the $55,000 in fraudulent debt. Unwind the trust and deed the house back to me, free and clear. File amended tax returns and pay the back taxes and penalties. A signed binding repayment plan for the rest, and family counseling with me, once a week for a year. Full transparency on his finances going forward. Or," Adize said, "Mrs. Tully files Monday." Desmond looked at me with his daddy's eyes. "Mama, please, I never wanted to hurt you. Brielle's family. They have so much, and I wanted the girls to have what those people have, and it got away from me, and once it started, I couldn't see how to stop without you finding out. So you decided I was too dumb to find out, I said quietly. You decided your mama, who balanced a seafood company's books to the penny for 31 years, was too foolish to count. You laughed about my figs, I'd bet. You hid me from 42 people, so I wouldn't embarrass you in front of Greenville. My voice did break then, just once. I worked nights and Saturdays so you could go to Clemson, Desmond. Your daddy poured the foundation of this house with his own 2 hands so you'd have something. And you used those hands' worth of work as collateral on a loan and called me feeble to the government. I'll sign it, he said, before I'd even asked. Whatever it says, I'll sign it. I'll fix all of it. Just tell me what I have to do. You have to become a man your father could look at, I said. But the paper's a start. He signed it that afternoon at the table where his daddy and I had eaten 10,000 suppers. Adesi gave him until the end of the month to make the first payment and unwind the trust, and she told him, in that flat voice, that she'd be watching every date and that one missed deadline would put the file in front of a judge. And then I told him the last thing, the thing I decided lying awake the night before. Until this is done and the house is mine again, you don't set foot here, and you don't call me to ask for one thing. You want to see those babies and me together. That happens in the counselor's office, on my terms, not your wife's. When the debt's paid, if you've truly changed, we'll see about the rest. But I am not your bank, and I am not your fool, and I am done pretending the love runs one direction. He left at dusk. I stood on the porch and watched his fine car go down my road, and I did not cry. I'd already done that. I felt hollow and full at the same time, which is a thing I didn't know a body could feel until that day. He signed everything by the deadline. He sold a boat I didn't know he had, and made the first payment 2 days early. The trust got unwound that fall, and the deed came back to me, my name alone, Wilhelmina Tully, on the house Russell built, and I held that piece of paper at this kitchen table, and I cried then, finally, the good kind. The debts in my name got paid off and closed. He amended the taxes and paid what he owed the government with the penalties, and Adase made sure of every bit of it. And here is the part I asked you to stay for. About 4 months on, Brielle left him. Or maybe he left her. I never got the whole of it. But I do know it was him, sitting in my counselor's office one Wednesday, who said it out loud, that he'd spent 15 years trying to be enough for people who were never going to count him as one of their own, and that he'd been ashamed of where he came from, ashamed of me, of his daddy's tin roof and my church dresses and my figs, and that the shame had eaten him until he'd done things he didn't recognize. He quit the firm that had his soul in a vise. He took a job doing taxes for working folks who can't afford the fancy places, and he started bringing my granddaughters down on Sundays, and we put up figs together on the porch, the 4 of us, Sutton learning to snap beans the way her daddy did at her age. I won't tell you it's all healed. Some things you break don't go back the way they were. They go back the way a bone does, with a knot in it you can feel on cold mornings. But he calls now and asks how I am before he asks for anything, and mostly he doesn't ask for anything at all. He took me to that very country club last June for his real birthday and pulled my chair out himself and introduced me to the room, his mamma, the bookkeeper, with that low country voice and those church dresses, and he was not ashamed. I'm 68 years old, and I learned something I should have known from the start. Loving somebody doesn't mean letting them treat you like you don't count. The strongest thing I ever did for my son wasn't the night shifts or the Clemson tuition. It was setting that folder on the table and saying, "No more." I sat on my porch that evening after they'd gone home, listening to the rain come down on Russell's tin roof like a drum, and for the first time in 4 years the house felt like mine again, every board of it, and I slept the whole night through. The thing nobody tells you about being lied to by your own child is how long the lie can sit in plain sight before you let yourself see it. I had 14 entries in a green folder for 4 years. The math was there the whole time. I just didn't want it to balance the way it did, because balancing it meant admitting my Desmond had looked at me and seen a soft thing to drain. The lesson I keep turning over, sitting here on Russell's porch, is that love without honesty isn't really love at all. It's just a comfortable way of using somebody who's decided ahead of time to forgive you. What saved me wasn't anger, though Lord knows I had it. It was the habit of writing things down, of confirming the figures before I acted on them, of calling that country club myself instead of running on what Loretta told me in the cereal aisle. 31 years of bookkeeping taught me that a feeling is not a fact, and a fact is the only thing that holds up at a kitchen table when a smart boy is looking you in the eye with his daddy's face and asking you to doubt what you know. If you take one thing from an old woman, take that. Keep your own records. Read what you sign. Knowing the truth is the only ground you can stand on when the people you trusted try to move it under your feet. But knowing wasn't enough by itself, and neither was being right. I had to find the nerve to set that folder down on the table and say the word no to the only child I have left, knowing it might cost me him and my grandbabies both. That's the part that nearly broke me, and that's the part I'm proudest of. Mercy is not the same as letting yourself be robbed. I gave Desmond a choice instead of a cell, and that was mercy. But I gave it to him with my back straight and the proof in my hand, and that was the spine his daddy raised me to have. Here is the cause and the effect of the whole thing, plain as I can say it. Desmond was so ashamed of where he came from that he hollowed himself out trying to be enough for Brielle's people, and the hollowing made him do things he couldn't undo with an apology. And when I refused to keep filling that hole with my money and my silence, when I made him face the bottom of it, that's the only thing that finally turned him around. Not my forgiveness, my boundary. I'm 68 years old, and I have learned that you do not protect the people you love by making yourself small for them. You protect them by being whole, by being honest, by being too strong to be used. The figs are coming in again this fall, and my granddaughters are learning to put them up the way I did, the way my mother did before me, and the house is mine, every board of it. That is enough. That is everything.